Yes, good morning. I would like to welcome you to this panel on how to integrate mental health in transitional justice, bringing justice and repairing damaged souls. My name is Elisabeth Baumgartner. I'm the key expert one of the Facility on Justice and Conflict and Transition. This is a consortium of organizations, 5 organizations that work with the European Union. It's a contract by the European Union on transitional justice and constitution building. And I'm very pleased to have you here and to discuss with you this important question. We have 3 speakers here. Unfortunately, Mrs. Robchamp is sick. She cannot participate. But we have a lot of people around the table who can discuss afterwards with us. I would now like to introduce first the topic, of course. Mental health and trauma treatment is an important aspect of transitional justice and peace building in general. Although it's sometimes a bit forgotten, it is an element of reparation for victims. It's an important aspect of healing during and after armed conflict or authoritarian regimes. But it is also an important tool for prevention. Only if trauma is addressed, it can help that violations are not reoccurring. And this is an important aspect we will discuss in this panel, why it also has this preventive aspect and why it is therefore important in crisis intervention and in peace building and in transitional justice. So our panelists are bringing together very different aspects and they're working in this field in different contexts. And I would now like to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Peter Wagner. He is the head of the European Commission Service for Foreign Policy Instruments, FPI. FPI helps countries to cope with crisis and maintain peace, security, law and order. In his career with the EU, Mr. Wagner has dealt very often with crisis situations, be it as the principal advisor for the coordination of COVID-19 related issues, or as head of the support group for the Ukraine, and as an advisor for the task force for Greece. He also served as the head of the Defense, Aeronautic and Maritime Industries Unit. Mr. Wagner, why is treating trauma and providing mental health support an issue that interests the EU, especially in its crisis intervention?
Thank you very much, Elisabeth, for moderating that. A big thank you from our side to the Paris Peace Forum for offering us a platform to discuss this issue. But my biggest thanks is to, now some of them sick unfortunately, but to the practitioners who have been willing to come here and talk about their very often very complicated very often far from, let's say, straightforward legally societal Now we're back, thank you. Now, yes, we are bringing some money to it, we're bringing some ideas to it, but of course the key is what is happening with that and how it is happening. So I'm also looking forward to getting more there. From our side, I think you mentioned already some of the elements why we find it important. There is this very immediate need in and after every crisis where you have lots of traumatized people around and you have to just do a kind of a first aid and you have to come in. But, and I think that is very important, you mentioned it, there's a long-term dimension. I think we know from previous conflicts, from previous crises, what can be the potential. The potential can be, we know that in some areas, that it leads to the outbreak of new aggressivity of new conflicts, because whole societies, groups of people have unhealed elements that they're carrying around and that are breaking out. But, and that is the privilege a bit of I'm looking around, of my generation, not too many, but we grew up in Europe with a parent and grandparent generation that was traumatized by the war. And we didn't understand very often why they reacted in certain situations even differently. And I was just telling to colleagues how when I had my first exchange as a 15-year-old with France, where it was just at the beginning difficult for me to understand what was there as unhealed conflict between from the Second World War. And some of it, by the way, back to the First World War. People not even having lived there at the time. So this is in the collective memory of people, of societies, of countries. And if we don't do it, not only in the immediate, but also then in the longer term perspective that we are talking about it, etc., I think we'll never get out of this spiral. For us, you referred to it already partly, we have a kind of a conceptual framework that is our policy framework to support transitional justice. Therein, this is a very important part because we find it really important there to stabilize it, to identify it, to draw attention to it. One more point which I understand we are discovering, and as I say I understand, I'm relatively new on the job and I'm also discovering what my colleagues are discovering, that is that sometimes you're having this situation that you see that those who are dealing and trying to be part of the healing process become themselves the victims. Now, having myself many years ago studied a bit of psychology, I'm not that much surprised because there, if you have any kind of psychiatric experts, they all had, at least at the time, supervision. Any psychologist who was active in the clinical treatment of people had to be him or herself part of a supervision process every few weeks because you yourself, you're not a machinery. This is overwhelming you very often, and there is evidence, Yemen for example, the people who are actively there every day collecting evidence of the worst nature that impacts them, that impacts the police people, the judges and many people around it. So also this group of, we call them the colleagues on the ground in the widest sense, they also need our support. And for us it's very important to really there to have also the practitioner who probably have to say more about that. For us, this is the kind of framework, the short term, the wider societal basis that we have to build and address, but also then all the kind of conflict clusters that could reappear, be established, etc. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wagner, for this introduction and the view of the EU and why it is important for the EU. We now come to one of these practitioners you have mentioned, Michel Nzabiyamwa. He's the head of the medical service of the Burundian police. He's a medical doctor, and he is the founder and president of Fondation Kapami, which is an organization that provides trauma healing for lasting peace, really, in this perspective of peace building in Burundi, especially for members of the security service, police and army, but also with IDPs, refugees. So the floor is yours. Please, could you, from your experience with the work of Fondation Kapami, tell us why you think it's important to address trauma, especially also with members of the security forces and also in the context of Burundi, where you, of course, had recurring cycles of violence and a very collective trauma. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Michel Nzabiyamwa, medical doctor, head of medical service of Burundi Police, and I'm leading the Kapami Foundation, an organization, local organization involved in healing trauma for lasting peace. We, first of all, I want to tell you, as a medical doctor, why Kapami have been born, if I can say. I was receiving a patient in my office. Then a woman comes and began to cry because you know Burundi used to be experiences of many cycles of violence. So there are women who were in the rebellion and the other who were in the government. So when we are receiving a patient, they began, instead of telling me I'm suffering from head, from belly, from back, he began to cry. And then I get the conviction that people are wounded. So I created this organization. And then we begin and partner with the police, of course. As a medical doctor, also a police officer, it has been easy to work in the police and army, because even if you have a lot of money as a civilian, it is not easy to get into military infrastructure. So it is easy for me because one of the parties and see the sign of the person who come to look for medication, the physical one, but find out his mental health problem. So it is very important. If we want peace, we have to get people who are free from trauma. So military and the police, you know, are people in the power of other community. If it is not healthy mentally, it can be a source of insecurity, if I can say. But if it's easy, is free from trauma, can be good. So we are dealing with this because we see that the security of the country comes from those people who are free from trauma, especially police and the army. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michel. We will talk more about the methodology you're using in Fondation Kapami afterwards. We are now coming to our third speaker, Murad Zubai. Murad is an artist, a Yemeni artist who currently lives in France. He is internationally known for his street art and art campaigns, mainly in Yemen, that started during the revolution and then continued during the armed conflict. In his artworks, he deals with human rights violations, with the suffering of victims, and he involved in his work communities. So he worked with families of disappeared persons, he worked with victims, and that's where the link comes to the issue of trauma and how to deal with trauma and with victims and how to use art as a tool. Murad Zubai also received international awards for his work, the Art for Peace Award, the Freedom for Expression Award, and the Artistic Protection Fund Award. Murad, please, the floor is yours with the question, how do you in your work encounter trauma? How do you think the art helps to deal with trauma?
Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for the introduction. And if you allow me, I would like just to take a minute of silence for all the victims and all the people who lost their lives during the raging wars around the world. 1 minute to remember those people. So, yes. So, thank you so much again, and for having me here. It's a pleasure. Just to go fast through my work, that it's usually I design a campaign with a specific theme, for example, and then later I invite the people to engage in this, where after that we can make a kind of debate in the street and provoking for those issues. In 2012, after the conflict happens during the revolution, the Sana'a, the city, the capital, was divided into parts. So in that phase, it was the first time to see again, after the civil war, the tanks and the bullets and the RPG in the street. It was a big deal then, and then this is why, after we lost the chance in the revolution, I invited people to the street. So it was this called the Revolution Walls, a campaign that started for 3 months, where later spread around the city, our country in Yemen. And here you see, after each event, that there is a collective groups of people. They are, whether they are artists, activists, passerbys, and something like this. So we see that people, ordinary people, talented artists, even soldiers, they were engaged after we talked to them. It's the way. So half of any work is how to speak to people, to converse. So the second and the main important campaign that launched a series of actions, which is the walls remember their faces, which is to remind the enforced disappearance people. This issue was happening since 60s. And I'm speaking today, would like to highlight that this issue, which is enforced disappeared, is still happening in the war still raging in Yemen since 8 years. And I'm calling through you for taking a serious procedures to help to, to focus on this issue, which is enforced disappearance in the country. There is hundreds or thousands of people disappeared until this moment we are speaking about, and tortured. So we have to push all the militias in the north, or the militias supported by Iran or a coalition to end this. But this is what's going on. So the campaign. The campaign, it started, I launched it with the enforced disappearance family. This is the power of it. Because those community, it was a small community, but being subjected to oppression and by all regimes followed in the north or after the unification or during the regime in the south. There was thousands of people who were disappeared. And in many cities, we were doing this for 102 enforced disappeared, were around 800 faces that spread in the, that resulting with awareness to millions of Yemenis about this issue. Of course, there is always a sequence. If there is power still in power, people still in power, so they will react. So this is what of the ideas, when they prevented, they deface some of the, or many of the murals. The issue that led to the people to search about their enforced disappeared, the families. So some of the cases start to appear, like this person is Mutahar al-Aryani, who was disappeared in the 80s. And when I met him, he was with others, he was paralyzed, There was, according to the doctors, there was a drill in his legs. And a lot of places in part of his body, there is a torture of electricity. If I tell you, this is what is still happening in the prisons now in Yemen, until this moment I'm speaking. So the issue is, of course, it was discussed in the parliament. The United Nations called the government to sign on the treaty to protect the people from this. But unfortunately, there is always something cut this evolution of the people. We were strong back then during the transition and also the revolution. And then the war, invasion of the militias, and then the war followed by coalition. So we are cut. There is always a problem because of the renewal wars. People fight, but there is something came to cut them from joining the future or achieving their dreams. Followed other campaigns, which is about treason, about children recruitment, and then followed, since there is 3 parts of my work, during the revolution, and then a period of revolution, a period of war, and a period of exile, when I am here since 3 years. So the ruins you see here, I was targeting with the other Yemenis. They joined me campaigns. The walls that were destroyed by bombardment during air strikes or Katyusha or whatever. And in camps of displacement people, this is one of the preference, because we are speaking here about peace, but there is no peace. And this work called war brand. So the peace is the brand of war, unfortunately. We speak a lot, and if there is a real will to end wars, we can do it in just a click. The powerful people, they can do it, or whatever. So phases of war, the wars, my work start also, as you said, it's a therapy to do it with war. I think also in this work, it was really difficult moment. Then my work started to be more violent, more aggressive, like folk war here. Sorry for this, but this is my conclusion of the war. It's a person who is being cut by all of his body, and there is only one finger in the middle that's still, but he's still playing with the oud, which is one of the instruments. This is in London. A woman is holding her baby head, and one other is in Sana'a, a child who's raising the peace. Exile and refuge wall. This is a piece called Devoured. A person is eating himself, but also there is other factors from outside that they are helping in this. It's in the Imperial Museum of War in Manchester. This wall, I did it 3 years ago in France, in Paris. And this, it was inspired by real people who died in a war, and it called The Last Dance of the Dead. So we see the people that they have a strange move when they are dead after the shelling, when people get them out. Voila, just those 3 paintings. The original one, it was, in addition to 7 NGOs, we had a meeting in the Élysée with the council of the president, Mr. Macron, and it was like a protest to put them in context anyway. So this is to criticize that there is a bargain war. There is no way to end it in Yemen. Arm factories, a lot of bargains, a lot of arm sales, and voila, just this to La Gare de Bonnefière. This is in Berlin last year. Ivan War. I supposed to bring the original work here, but they said it's difficult because of security measurements here. So it was a wall in Berlin, the same. This wall, you can have it now, it's in the center of Paris. It's about the prisons in Yemen. It's called Prisons of Blood. It's in Oberkampf wall. It's a famous wall. You can just check it. There is still only 1 week before they invite another artist. So it's inspired by Monk, The Scream, famous painting, but also now I added this. It's like invading those barrels or bars that going through the soul, not only just the body. So that's it. So I would like to mention the story of children that I did a workshop for them. They lost their families in Yemen, And it was 4 days only workshop where we give the children pencils and colors and papers, where they start to deal with it. It was really aggressive in the first day. They tore the papers. But then the 4th day, with a lot of participation with or painting, they started to draw smoothly on the paper. So this is how art can emerge. I'm not saying that art can find the solutions. It cannot feed people. It cannot stop the killing. But it's a way to highlight for something. Thank you so much, and for having me again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Murat. We will now go into a bit more deeper questions related to our topic. First, Mr. Wagner, could you let us know a bit where actually FPI, the EU, is engaging on the question of trauma, mental health in your concrete actions?
Thank you very much. Now, the list is pretty long. And maybe I give you a few examples, because the list really is going from like Afghanistan, and at least to you like Ukraine. I don't know whether there's anything with Z, but I wouldn't exclude that we did something in Zaire at a certain moment as well. So it really is much more than when we started to look systematically into, from different angles, what we are doing there, that we're to some degree ourselves surprised how much we are actually doing in different manners. And I think that is a first part that I would like to mention, that we're really trying to look into this question in a comprehensive, participative, as we say, also manner that is also interdisciplinary. And I think the example that there are the art of Mr. Subai, who, by the way, has a very good Instagram and Twitter presence, where you get a lot of the other pieces of art that he's been doing. I think that is one of the examples. But in Rwanda, for example, we really tried to have a program that was holistically trying to address it, where we, on the one hand, looked really for what is possible also to support the related economic development, because it is very multifaceted, the way you have to look at the questions. We looked at the strengths and weaknesses in the communities, and brought together artists, musicians, painters, journalists, civic actors, as widely as possible to exchange. Because of course there is let's say, a medical a situation, but it's much wider, it's much deeper. And that's also where I think in this participatory approach, it's very important that we, with the partners with whom we are working, try to really adapt work to the local context, because not everything is culturally acceptable and possible everywhere, and then, as with other interventions, and probably here particularly. So it's very important here again that we are also able to reach with our ideas and work really the local level, and not impose something that comes from Brussels, the capital, wherever, but that is developed on the ground. What we're also doing, as an example, is we're trying to increasingly mainstream that into our action and keep that dimension of traumatized parts of the population, people, into in mind. I mentioned already earlier on all kind of judges, police people, etc. But also where colleagues are have integrated it is in demining work that is happening in Libya, because there as well the people who are in the demining sector are on a daily basis in this highly conflict-focused and concentrated way active. They really need the support afterwards on it as well. And allow me a short final point, which we also think is important, and it's always difficult to discuss that in the conflict, but since we're here a little bit out of a specific conflict, I think we have to mention it. And that is, of course, the fact that you not only have to look at the victims, but you have to look at the perpetrators, aggressors as well. Because in many cases, someone who was a victim in a first instance can become an aggressor and a perpetrator in a repetition of a conflict. And that is something that, and as I said, we see that in discussions everywhere. As long as the conflicts are going on, it's probably inside the countries, the communities, very, very difficult to address. But as the international community trying to support that, I think we have a responsibility also to keep that in mind and see how we can factor that in our work as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and that was a good introduction, actually, to hear more from you, Michel, on how you actually work, for instance, with police and army, and what kind of methodologies you are using. As you said, it's difficult, probably more difficult to work with this community than with victims to address it, but you managed to do it with Fondation Capami, and it would be interesting to hear from you how you are doing that.
Thank you very much. Just to come to say, to know how trauma is, you have to know the structure of a person. What kind of site will trauma touch in the person? So first of all, we know that, that trauma affects the brain. The brain, not all the brain, the part which is called pineal gland. The pineal gland have 4 components. The 4 components is the first is the will, the second is the emotion, the second is the relationship, and also the mind. So the 4 components are touched. When there is a war, when there is a conflict, a big conflict, there is the 4 parts are touched, and it is like a structure, a normal structure of a human being. So this is the origin of bad behavior that you see in persons. Before he was a good person, after his anger, decided to suicide, decided to kill, decided to adopt a self-destructive behavior. This is why we have to know, first of all, the etiologic treatment. In medicine, you have to know exactly the disease before acting or to give medication. So after discovering, people are traumatized, so we adopt an approach, a specific approach for our country. Because in Africa, in Burundi, the trauma is in the community. It is not like somewhere else. War keep people together, etc. And so we adopt a specific approach, which is used in Kapami, used in 5 days. We call this approach MHP. This approach is we give topics which is related to a self-awareness. This is the key factor who help people to be free. We give a topic 3 days to know the personality profile, the types of wound, and the sign. And finally, the person discover himself. Finally, what you are teaching is me. And he discovered the type of a wound he has, and then he become free to say what is his past. Without this, a human being is not easy to say his past, especially with his bad past. He kept it for himself. So there are 3 parts also in the brain. There is some part which is called conscience, and subconscious, and unconscious. So the bad situation that happened to the person are stored in the unconscious. This part, with the self-awareness approach that we are using to deal with the past, we help people to keep out the component of the unconscious to come back to the conscious. And the person where we are doing this, some cries, others take big decision instead of the stuff of suiciding. We know now why people suicide themselves. When we are doing this, people pick big decision. So it is the new structure of the human being that we try to help. the change of behavior, I was telling to my colleague, to change the behavior of a human being is something very difficult. But with the approach that we are doing, we see people change, take decision of healing, of helping people. We have seen even people with physical disease get free from this. For instance, diabetes. I have 2 cases in our country of people who have been free in their mind, and then the diabetes ran down. It is something that I have seen, because everything is located in the 4 parts that I told you. If we act toward this part, people become free. We have many testimony stories of people who have some children in extramarital relationship who accepted to bring these children. And a lot of cases of stop suiciding. And other cases of people who stop the bad plan they were planning to kill people. This is why I see that if you are looking for peace, it is one of the key to get peace in the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think we probably realize that the needs are huge and that we cannot leave it to the experts because there are so many societies like the one in Burundi, in Yemen, where this topic has to be addressed, and there are very few service providers, actually, professionals who can do this work. That's why we think it's important to integrate it in peace building, in transitional justice, in community reconciliation projects, in art. And very shortly, Murad, you as an artist, I heard you asking Michel, can I learn from you? Can I go to Burundi and see what you're doing? How do you think, what would you need as an artist if you want to address trauma, if you work with communities? What do you need?
Well, I need just to continue what I'm doing. Okay, regarding your question, what I do need as an artist, there was, since like 11 years, there is a lot of experience already accumulated, but it's not enough, as you said, always, we need to improve. You mentioned that my work is healing and other things. There is many names I forget also. So I'm practicing this, but the names, it's not really my concentration in this field. But what I need is to move more, to have the accessibility to for these issues, and also if for more efficient actions, maybe to have more training regarding this. What we do, it's not really connected just only to art. It's more also to activism, to human rights, to also expression of freedom of expression. So I don't know, in these sections we don't find also the tools are easy to access to. So this is a situation, voila. If I answered your question.
Thank you very much. So we heard probably more training. People who work in these fields have to learn more on what is trauma, how is it expressed, what are the signs, and how can we deal with it. And I would now like to open the floor. I know there are people who are working in conflict situations, and who can, of course, add their experience to the panel here, to the discussion. The floor is open, please. Yes, Tyler.
Hi, thank you so much, and it's for organizing this event. It's so fundamental. We work on peace-building processes, and we come from South Asia. Mr. Wagner spoke about the trauma that his generation faced. in Europe. In South Asia, unfortunately, we haven't moved much from the trauma of decolonization, partition, and also the lingering conflict in Kashmir that is still causing so much ongoing trauma. So I think it's the aspect that I wanted to highlight is the snowballing, the snowball impact that over time it doesn't actually finish at some point. And I remember talking to a psychologist, and when I told them about the conflict of Kashmir, I introduced everything, and they said, it looks like you're talking about a divorced couple that is trying to take the custody of their child, and the child is traumatized, but so are the parents. In this case, the two countries that continue to. But I think there is, Mr. Wagner also spoke about the cultural aspect of it. In our experience, that's very, very important. I believe that as humans, we have the resilience also inbuilt in our systems, in our communities, in our families. That's what we are, ever since we came into existence. We have faced trauma and we have bounced back also. So there is that flame, there's inherent ability for us to come back to it. And I think that needs to be respected, that needs to be allowed. It's not enough, unfortunately, in contexts like Kashmir, for example. There is so much crisis after crisis, and what you do in the midst of that, when you try to make sense of the political settlement or the other issues, it's so much difficult to actually remain, to create a kind of a structure that could enhance that and make it possible. So I think we have learned that we need to work more with the psychologists. In our experience, I think peace building, which is more informed and sensitive to the context, brings that ability where the combination of looking at a future, which is also important to move out of the conflict. You can't just wait for that to pester and remain there and then just try to treat the trauma people. It is also very impossible. But at the same time, you can't just drag peace process and peace negotiations without dealing with the deeper trauma that people have gone through. So I think there is a very legitimate, fundamental need for that sort of approach that looks at local resilience and is aware of the space that culturally the people in a context need, and at the same time provides a resource in a more conflict-sensitive way and a more do-no-harm way, that it actually maximizes the impact for transformation. And I think we have seen in our smaller ways where multiple sort of spaces created for the communities to actually do their own analysis and to look at their own trajectory of how they can come out of the conflict as well as the generational trauma, that you see positive outcomes as well. So yeah, just wanted to endorse the theme and the fundamental nature of it, why it is so important, because ignoring it is only delaying any positive contribution to me. But by the way, just wanted to mention, we are here at booth 15. We are also presenting another avenue, which is looking at climate change as a confidence building measure between the two countries. So please do visit us if you're free. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, please. Could you please present yourself when you start?
My name is Edna Jaime. I am Mexican. I lead a think tank in a Mexico City-based think tank. We do policy analysis. And my question is there a possibility of healing without justice? Because state institutions are very weak. Where human rights are violated, where we have a crisis of human rights, is because states are very weak and they are not able to solve, to give a response, to construct a truth for the victims. So I'm wondering if it's possible to heal with no justice. That's my question.
Thank you. Michel, do you want to?
Thank you very much. I can, with the methodology that we are using in Burundi, I have seen that healing comes before justice because it is a microanatomy. Microanatomy is the anatomy, but small. The component of the pineal gland which are touched. When a person receives counseling after receiving teaching on self-awareness, he discovers what he is, as it is like a looking glass like this. Instead of accusation of others, he finally, I was wrong, me too. So I have many examples of people who decide not to go in justice because of healing. We have cases. I have one case of a person who planned even to kill another person because of 10 million Burundian francs that have stolen him. But after the healing session, he decided publicly, I give up. This is why I can say that justice can be, after healing, there is many cases of justice who are cancelled. Thank you very much.
I just have one thing. I say that I believe that the justice is the real healing. So that's it. We need the justice. It's very important. It's not just half solutions. If there is no justice, then it's a lie. Voila. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, and it's at the heart of connecting, dealing with the past and trauma healing. And actually, it was something that our fourth speaker wanted to address also. And I think there is also, from the side of psychologists who are working in this field now, a recognition that they have to link their work more with the question of a broader transitional justice process. And I see there is somebody in the line here, Mr. Konare.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you see? Yeah, you're here on the screen.
Yes. Hello, everyone. So I'm Dugukulo Bakunare. I am a clinical psychologist from Mali, and I have also been working in peacebuilding. I guess I have several things to say. The main one being that as a psychologist also need some kind of supervision if you want to get through with the work that we're doing with healing and reconciliation and justice as well. You know, there's always this idea that psychologists can come in and just sort of save the day. But, you know, there are also actors and there are people from the societies themselves. You know, you want to have this balance where you have people, locals, who can actually deal with the context, you know, who are savvy, who know what they're talking about. But at the same time, you know, there are people that are exposed themselves. So you need to find the right balance, you know, between having people from outside and having people from inside. And when you have people from inside as well, you need to be careful that, you know, they're not triggered by what is happening. And if so happens that there are systems or they can also benefit from hearing other professionals, you know, they can self-reflect. And that's one of my main challenges right now, you know, working on a project of psychosocial support of victims in Mali. We have psychologists, you know, people who have been trained before, you know, they have quite a general understanding of psychology. You know, they don't necessarily have the clinical experience, but we do need them. You know, we need these psychologists because there's really, you know, there's a demand from the field, you know. We're not a country where people are used to dealing with psychologists, but now they themselves say we need to speak up. we really need people to talk to. And with foreign media coming in, people can recognize that there are professionals now that are particularly meant for these cases. So what do we do with the professionals? We can come in, we can sit down with them, we can help them introspect, we can also learn with them together to find ways to modernize practices of psychology by integrating certain modes, certain cultural methodology that have been used for centuries and centuries, and how we can use them in therapy. For instance, in Bamako, the capital city of Mali, at the psychiatric ward of the Hôpital du Ponger, there's something they call koteba thérapeutique, which is like a traditional form of drama that is used every week, where there's a procession, there's a dance, and then the director comes in, he presents the scene, and he says, okay, today, what would you like us to talk about? And someone will say, oh, I would like to talk about alcoholism. And then he'll say, okay, let's talk about it. And then there's improvisation, there are drums, and everybody joins in, people who are not used to talking, they finally speak up. So, with something like this, you can get the people to be recruited, quote unquote, into therapy in a more, in an easier way, in a way that they can understand. You can also have contribution from therapists, from the local societies. But always, really, I think that we have to keep in mind that we need to find the right balance and also have people contribute in their own countries, in their own culture, and have ways to supervise them so that they don't also get traumatized by whatever is happening in the field, and they can keep doing the necessary work. So that's my contribution for today.
Thank you very much. There are 2 more interventions here. Kati, please. Or first.
Thank you. Good morning, and thanks for organizing this important session. My name is Kati Leinonen, and I'm working in the European External Action Service in the division in charge of conflict prevention and peace mediation. And really, it was 2 years ago in 2020 when we elaborated the first ever peace mediation guidelines for the European Union. And I will be quite frank, we didn't look at psychosocial aspects in the process until we started the consultations about the guidelines. And so many people came to us, in particular from the civil society, and said, you have to include this. This is very important. And we did include this, and it's maybe something I'd like to bring here as an element, is that in particular in peace mediation processes where we support parties, for example, to negotiate peace agreements, that's where I think we have to have an integral part for psychosocial aspects in the negotiations, and also in accompanying the conflict parties, but also those who facilitate the negotiations and who mediate have to understand how important this dimension is. Yesterday I was in another event and there was a recollection of the Mali peace process 10 years ago, and we discussed women's participation, and the women's participation in the process had been very marginal, also because women don't dare to speak up in front of the men. So I think it's important that we create these safe spaces throughout the peace processes for treating issues such as sexual and gender-based violence in conflict, and giving the space for people who have suffered to speak in a safe space. And also I think in the peace agreements we have to, in the agreements already have spaces for trauma healing and psychosocial support, facilitate this for a very long time. I was myself posted in Rwanda 10 years after the genocide and was dealing with the reconciliation process there. And it struck me some time ago. I read a very interesting article about the genocide in Rwanda and how the trauma can actually traverse 3 generations. So it really goes from parents to the children, and I would just like to highlight the importance of also working with children who maybe have not been there themselves, but who carry this burden. And I think even in Europe, many of us have experience from our families from this and can relate to that. As my final point for conflict prevention, So the European Union carries out early warning and conflict analysis in fragile and conflict-affected countries. And I certainly would think that there is room for improvement also there, that we can take in consideration trauma and psychosocial aspects in those analyses, which are then paving the way for our programming and also for our supportive actions in those countries, so that we take that into account. But I will be quite honest, I think there is room for improvement. And again, congratulations for having this and bringing us together and drawing our attention to this important aspect.
Thank you very much. I see the clock is ticking and our panel is unfortunately almost over. We would need much more time to discuss this, and I think we can take the time afterwards. But I would now like to give you, Peter Wagner, the floor actually for some final remarks until before we end this panel. Thank you.
Yeah, the clock is ticking here all the time. Thank you. No, I wanted to still answer to two of the points raised earlier on, which I find important. And the first one is that I think, or I could also say, I fear that one has to find ways to do healing without justice. Because I think if you look at history and the situation now, you will never have a situation where, or will always sometimes maybe, but always find situations where everyone will have a satisfactory degree of justice. The understanding of it, the possibilities of it, etc., the compromises necessary in reality will force us to find ways to do healing even without. But, and that is the point which I think you also made very clearly, we have to combine it. The one can't go without the other. At least we have to try to get justice into it as well. That I'm deeply convinced of. The second point is on also the way how we are working there, where I think we have to jointly look further, because I indicated that already. Let's say the kind of healing cannot come permanently from the kind of donor capital driven approaches. We have to really find, and that's the work that you and many others are doing, where it's much more community, not only community based, but also community driven. And that it is happening in the community with everybody involved. And that's, I think, where I know work is underway, but where probably still a little bit more has to happen, because we cannot have psychologists and specialists for everybody who is traumatized for individual treatment. It's the sad reality. So you have to find there really wider and different approaches, and have to further develop them. I think we are on a good way, but a lot is if it's happening. And therefore, as a final remark from our side, I try to say that at the beginning, we are very well aware of the importance. We try to continue our work here, and we stand ready to really cooperate with many of you. We are already, others maybe are partners for the future. Thank you very much.
Is there a time to say something?
I think I'm looking to the organizers, we have to finish. Unfortunately, we had 1 hour, but we are still around to continue the discussion. I'm really sorry, I know there were many more people who wanted to intervene. We had 1 hour and I have to finish here. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot also to FPI to support this panel, to make sure that we had this interesting interventions here. And we wish you a good conference, and we are still here, and please, let's keep on talking. Thank you.
Thanks to you too.
you.